Chapter 53-42. He was just a eunuch. He couldn't get close at all. Mu Shanji's words shocked everyone present, especially Imperial concubine Xia. When she saw the token, she almost fainted. The Empress also pretended to be shocked. Except for Imperial concubine Xia, everyone thought she didn't know. Imperial concubine Xia woke up and looked at the Empress with hatred. Mu Shanji didn't die, but he wasn't restored as a prince. Because his existence was a disgrace to the royal family. Even if he lived in a big house in the capital, had endless money, and had countless servants to serve him, he still hated the Empress. He hated Imperial concubine Xia, the Xia family, and the Emperor. However, he couldn't touch these people he hated. Imperial concubine Xia cried every day. She hated the Empress very much. She told Mu Shanji that the Empress must have planned all of this. After Mu Shanji heard it, he also felt that it was very possible. He wasn't stupid enough to think that the Empress was really as kind as she looked. Now that he thought about it, many things were full of countless coincidences. The Empress clearly wanted to play him to death. Now he didn't have any chance to inherit the throne. He was extremely resentful. Without evidence, he couldn't do anything to the Empress. Mu Shanji thought of the Xia family and Imperial concubine Xia. Why didn't they overturn the Emperor's notice and make the Xia family their own king? Imperial concubine Xia was also moved. The Empress had hurt her son so badly, but there was no evidence. She didn't believe that the Emperor didn't have any speculation. He clearly didn't want to pursue this matter. He thought that her son was useless and humiliating. In that case, she might as well go all the way and rebel. However, as soon as things started, the Xia family's rebellion was stopped by the Emperor. Imperial concubine Xia was banished to the cold palace, and the Xia family's property was confiscated. Mu Shanji was also imprisoned in a very remote house in the capital. His life wasn't as good as before. The Emperor didn't have any feelings for this son at all. Moreover, the other party wanted his life. It was already a blessing to let him live. All the crimes of the Xia family were exposed, and all the treasures they collected were all taken away. Those who should be killed were killed, and those who should be exiled were exiled. Su Fengyun was paralyzed on the bed. She could only watch helplessly as her clan was destroyed. She struggled to get up, but she flipped over. This time, her other side was also paralyzed. Now that everyone was in danger, no one cared about her. Su Fengyun starved to death in her room. Before she died, she remembered the state of the person who helped her change her fate. She heard that he was covered in abscesses. Could this really be retribution? After the Xia family was finished, the Empress thought that she had won. Who would have thought that the Emperor would throw her a pile of evidence one day, and she lost all her energy? Later on, the Empress died of illness and her maternal family declined. The Crown Prince did not meet the Emperor's requirements and was eventually crowned as king. Another Crown Prince was appointed, who was the Imperial Preceptor's personal disciple. I didn't expect so many things to happen in such a short time. After reading so much news, Xie Rong said in surprise, Elder Bai has also returned to that mysterious island. Even the Emperor can't keep such an expert. The system snickered. Elder Bai, that fellow, had already gotten enough and felt that he could return to the island to enjoy life. How could being in the palace compare to being on the island? Tang Guo also checked on Elder Bai's situation through the system. He was basking in the sun in the vegetable garden. His life was very comfortable. Tang Jian saw that Tang Guo and Xie Rong were very loving. Xie Rong treated her very well, so she was finally relieved. She developed her business in peace and became a rich woman. She also fulfilled her previous vow to remain unmarried. One thing worth mentioning was that when Tang Jian went to the capital, she received a small note. Looking at the familiar handwriting, she couldn't help but recall the past. She looked at the people coming and going, and felt very lucky. Everything she saw now was different from the dream. The people around her were living very well. She glanced at the content of the note, smiled faintly, and then burned the note. Mu Shanji didn't give up and wanted to pull her into his group. He even made up a beautiful dream for her to be an empress. He had never been sober. In the palace, the emperor heard the secret guard's report and smiled. He's a smart person. Chapter 53-43. Tanghua, you're already a sophomore. Why are you still using lipstick that's less than 100 yuan? You'll end up in your stomach. You should use something more expensive. A lipstick costs at most 200 or 300 yuan. Why should you save that little? When Tanghua regained consciousness, she heard such a harsh voice. She looked in front of her and saw a mirror. The person in the mirror should be her. Speaking of which, most of the time, her appearance really didn't disappoint her. Her face was also very good-looking. However, she was only a sophomore and not yet 20 years old. Therefore, there wasn't much makeup on her face. It looked like she simply applied a thin layer of foundation, followed by a series of necessary steps such as eyebrows, blush, lipstick, and so on. She realized that this makeup looked a little formal. It didn't look like the kind of makeup that she usually put on for fun. Thinking that her current identity was a university student, she thought that this makeup might be a part-time job. The appearance of this body was very good. Most of it was done in the style of etiquette. I agree with what Tao Jijia said. Lipstick is different from other things. It's better to use something more expensive. Tanghua followed the voice and looked in the direction of the girl who spoke. It was a beautiful girl. Although the other party was wearing no makeup, it still couldn't hide the brilliance on her body. This was a very good-looking girl. Yen Yen, don't you think so? Bai Tian's gaze turned to the other side. There was a girl sitting there playing on the computer. She was probably the tallest in this dormitory. She looked back at Tanghua and replied, sometimes, it's better not to apply low-quality lipstick. It doesn't look good. The color isn't right. It gives people a feeling that it's very cheap. After this person called Yan Yan finished speaking, the entire dormitory fell silent. It was as if they were waiting for something. However, after a minute, the dormitory was still very quiet. The three people raised their heads in surprise and looked in Tanghua's direction. Tanghua stared at herself in the mirror and was carefully observing the lipstick on her lips. The original owner's makeup skills were actually quite good. From everything on the table, it could be seen that the cosmetics she used were indeed very cheap. Many things cost dozens of yuan each. In the eyes of many people, they were indeed not considered cosmetics. But with her good makeup skills and the original owner's natural beauty, it was hard to tell how cheap the makeup on her face was. As for the color of the lipstick, she felt that it was not bad. She had just noticed that her three roommates usually spent a lot of money. Perhaps their family background was very good, so they felt that a few dozen yuan worth of lipstick was very cheap. In fact, someone had done a survey and found that the highest-selling lipstick on the internet was actually less than 50 yuan. After applying the lipstick and walking out, not many people could really tell how much the lipstick cost. Speaking of which, everyone had a different view of spending. There was really no need to be so cheap when it came to lipstick. A lipstick that cost a few hundred yuan was good, but it might not be suitable for those who were poor and thrifty. The original owner went to work part-time, and the things he used were very cheap, which meant that he wasn't rich. It wasn't that she didn't know that expensive makeup was good, but each one cost a few hundred. With so much variety, it would add up to a few thousand. She couldn't afford it at all. Chapter 53-44. Because she didn't have any memories, Tangwa didn't respond to her 3 roommates. Instead, she was seriously touching up her makeup. She would go to the toilet later and look at the memories of this world. When she stood up, she found that her 3 roommates were looking at her strangely. She paused for a moment before going to the toilet. What's wrong with her today? Tao Jiejia was a little puzzled. She looks weird. I've told her several times before not to always use those cheap things. It's really degrading. It's simply lowering the standards of our dormitory. She always retorts. What she found strange was why Tangwa didn't blush and didn't show a very timid, embarrassed look that was about to cry. The other party's gentle glance just now was full of confidence. This made Tao Jiejia a little angry. She was almost stunned by such cheap things on Tangwa's face. Maybe she's in a hurry, Tao Jiejia said to herself. She works part-time every week and only earns 200 to 300 yuan a week. It's enough to buy lipstick. It feels like a waste of time. By Tian, maybe it's more meaningful to her. 200 to 300 yuan is indeed a little. It's not worth it. She has to stand for so long. It's simply cheap labor. Tangwa didn't pay attention to her roommate's conversation in the dormitory. She had already closed her eyes and was receiving the memories of this world. She was 19 years old this year and had just entered her 2nd year of university. It was indeed as she had guessed. Today was Friday. Coincidentally, there were no classes in the afternoon and she was going to work part-time. Her family was very poor. Her parents couldn't give her more resources. Her tuition fees were paid on loan. Her living expenses depended on her working part-time every week. Just as Tao Jiejia said, she could only earn 200 to 300 yuan a week at most. However, to her, it was good enough. At least she had living expenses. She also wanted to buy better makeup, but if she did that, she wouldn't have money to eat. Going to university was her dream. After she went to university, her dream was to find a good job in the future with a generous salary. She could bring a different kind of change to her and her family. In fact, being born in such a poor family, she had some inferiority complex in her bones. However, she also had some pride. If she didn't have that bit of pride in her bones and was willing to pay a price for money, she might not be using lipstick that was worth dozens of yuan now. She didn't want to use that kind of method to get money. She hoped that her money would come from the right and she could spend it comfortably. Behind her back, many people looked down on her and thought that she was poor. In fact, her roommates in the dormitory had a better attitude. She had experienced even worse scenarios. Some of the boys in the school failed to woo her, and in the end, they were verbally abused and mocked by the other party. She kept her spine straight and used these external obstacles as motivation. She thought that since she had come this far, in a few more years, her life would definitely change. These so-called alumni and classmates, on the day of graduation, they might never meet again. However, she underestimated the viciousness of human nature. She didn't know if someone couldn't stand her living so cleanly, or if they saw that she was especially easy to bully and wanted to bully her, so they arranged a game for her. This was originally a game for fun, but it made her life stop at the age of 19. It happened next month. The class would organize an activity, and the expenses would be paid by a few classmates with good family backgrounds. Everyone in the class would book a cruise ship to go out and play. Wasn't transmigration games popular recently? There was also the Truman World. Some people wanted to create a real-life version of the Truman World. Chapter 53-45. They planned to put the person who didn't know the truth on the island and set up some scenes on the island to make her feel like she had transmigrated to another era. The camera would be placed in a dark place and they would all watch from behind to see how this person would react. They played this game purely because they were bored and wanted to find something fun. They also planned to wait for the game to be exposed, or when this person broke down, they would take the initiative to end the game. Wasn't the host very poor? If she wanted to make a scene, they would compensate her with some money. She should be happy. After all, she looked like she was really short of money. This was already part of the plan. There were two lucky people in the class. One was Tangua because she was the poorest person in the class. Other than going to class, she had to work part-time to earn money. Many people didn't like her and wanted to see her make a fool of herself. Especially those who failed to pursue her. They wanted to see her cry and be afraid. The other person was also an unsociable person in the class. He didn't talk all day and was like a mute. Other than going to class, he usually stayed in the library and didn't make friends. Many students wanted to see how this bookworm would react when he found out that he had transmigrated and changed the environment. The game started with the whole class sitting on the cruise ship. The food of the host and bookworm Enchanting was drugged. When they were in a daze, the people around them would make it seem like the cruise ship had hit a reef. There was a possibility that they would fall silent. Before they could react, they would pass out. When they woke up again, they were on the island that the group of students prepared for them. This island was decorated to look like an ancient abandoned village that was haunted at night. It was very old and scary. The host and bookworm didn't know that this was a trap. They thought that they had transmigrated and started to work together to survive here. After the host panicked at first, she gradually calmed down and decided to make a raft with bookworm. When the time came, they would see if they could go out and see what the outside world was like. Bookworm Enchanting still didn't talk much and just knocked on things every day. The two's smooth cooperation made the people watching behind them unhappy. Thus, they started to create all kinds of difficult and scary scenes. They even put in some snakes, insects, rats, and ants to scare them. The two of them were indeed shocked at first, but they were both people with strong adaptability and quickly drove away the crisis. The people outside were playing bigger and bigger, greatly increasing the difficulty of their survival. In the end, they even found people to disguise themselves as bandits. When the original owner was running away, she accidentally slipped and fell down the hill. The back of her head hit something sharp and she died. Her life stopped at the age of 19 forever. The group of people outside who were watching the surveillance cameras were shocked and they realized that things had gotten out of hand. They paid the men who pretended to be robbers to keep the secret. This group of bandits did not want to cause any trouble, so they took the money and left. They decided to bury this secret in their hearts and never speak of it. Then, this group of frightened students took a cruise ship and left the deserted island. They didn't even bring the bookworm Enchanting back. After returning to school, they all agreed that Enchanting and the original owner didn't go out with them at all. These two people didn't fit in with the group, so no one suspected them. Chapter 53-46. This was also their plan from the beginning. Other than the class, no one else knew about it. In addition, there were many capable families in this group. Thus, the disappearance of the original owner and Enchanting was covered up just like that. At first, they were scared witless, afraid that Enchanting would come back. But Enchanting never came back. They gradually believed that Enchanting either died on that island or that no one passed by there. He had always been there. 10 years later, most of these classmates had successful careers. Someone in the class organized a class reunion. After not seeing each other for so many years, they really wanted to meet up. But they didn't know that the person who sent the invitation was Enchanting. This class reunion was a gathering on a cruise ship. This was a normal activity, so no one suspected anything. No one knew that the cruise ship was heading to the same isolated island as before. They had long forgotten the location of the isolated island. At this time, beautiful villas had been built on the island. It was very different from before. On the first day that this group of classmates moved in, people started to die. One died every day. This experience was like a nightmare. In the end, only 2 people survived. Bai Tian and her boyfriend, Jiang Yicheng. Bai Tian's boyfriend, Jiang Yicheng, was the only family member in the class who was brought in. It was because of him that Bai Tian was able to keep her life. The person who planned all of this was the quiet bookworm, Mu Xiaoning. The bad games that his classmates played back then had left a huge psychological shadow on him. At first, he really thought that he and the original owner had accidentally transmigrated and tried their best to survive. The original owner was chased by bandits and fell down a hill and died. Later, all the danger was gone. Later, he lived alone on the island. One day, he found that there were cameras on the island. Even though there was no electricity, he still understood that he hadn't transmigrated. He had been played. After that, he thought of a way to get out. It took him a long time to build a beautiful island and let those people die here. In the end, Bai Tian and Jiang Yicheng escaped and brought the police. Mu Xiaoning saw that he couldn't kill Bai Tian. Perhaps he felt that there was no point in killing such a small character, so he didn't persist. If he let Bai Tian live in this world, she probably wouldn't be able to live in peace for the rest of her life. Before Mu Xiaoning jumped into the sea, Bai Tian questioned him why he was doing this. Why did he do such a vile and cruel thing? It was rare for Mu Xiaoning to speak, and it was also rare for Bai Tian to hear him speak. I learned from you guys to play a game. I didn't expect that I would accidentally lose dozens of lives. I'm sorry, I went a little overboard. Mu Xiaoning's last words were Bai Tian's nightmare. For the rest of his life, he spent every week doing psychological counseling. Indeed, it was as Mu Xiaoning had thought. Living was worse than death. After looking through the memories, Tang Guo couldn't help but say to the system, "You really can't provoke someone who looks like an honest person." She only wanted to say one thing about what Mu Xiaoning had done: it was really well done. Unfortunately, he had also paid with his life for this. To be honest, it was still not worth it. If not for these things, Mu Xiaoning's life would definitely be very exciting. The person who could come up with such a perfect plan was definitely a genius. Tang Guo was thinking that the purpose of her coming here was to complete the original owner's life, and also to stop Mu Xiaoning from ruining his life because of those scum. Chapter 53-47. After all, it was not worth it to ruin her life for a scumbag. Tang Guo came out of the toilet. It had only been 3 minutes since she received the memory, so no one in the dormitory suspected anything. When Tang Guo came out, she was met with 3 pairs of eyes. First, she looked at Tao Jiejia. She remembered that in the plot, Tao Jiejia was hanged by a scarf. The scarf was a famous brand and was very expensive. Her death was very tragic. Her gaze fell on Wei Yan. Wei Yan was electrocuted because she never left her computer. Mu Xiaoning gave her such a way to die. Finally, she looked at Bai Tian. The living were actually more miserable than the dead. Perhaps Bai Tian regretted what happened in the past, but Mu Xiaoning would not choose to forgive her. Instead, he planned to take revenge. The 3 of them wanted to say something, but Tang Guo's gaze gave them a bad feeling. There was some pity in it, and they were confused. Tang Guo did not look at them because she was going to do her part-time job. If she was late, her money would be deducted. Now, she was starting to integrate into the role in this world. She got on the bus and looked at the cars outside. She was thinking about what she should do this time. There was no need to kill everyone. Mu Xiaoning had already done it once. She still had to complete her studies, complete her life, and fulfill the dream of the original owner. She could not do something that would destroy her future. The incident would happen next month. It was too late to make other preparations. However, she was not happy to let these people live well. It was really difficult. This was the rule of law. It was difficult to do things. What's with her gaze? It makes me feel cold. Not long after Tang Guo left, Tao Jijia hugged her arms and trembled. It's scary. She's a little strange today. Wei Yan was confused. Did she find out about the class's plan? It shouldn't be. If she knew, she wouldn't have such a reaction. Something else probably happened. Tao Jijia pursed her lips. Actually, this is also beneficial to her. We've already prepared the compensation for her. If she can't hold on halfway through the game, we'll end it at any time. No matter how long she can hold on, we'll reward her. Her classmates saw that she was having a hard time, so they decided to help her. Bai Tian was a little worried. It's starting next month. Will there be any problems? What should we do if something happens? Aren't there surveillance cameras? There shouldn't be any problems. There are people watching over them at all times. Wei Yan said, I'm more curious about how the bookworm in class will react. To be honest, I haven't seen him say more than 2 sentences since university. I'm looking forward to it too. I wonder if the bookworm will panic when he finds out that he has transmigrated. It'll be fine by next month. Tao Jijia said excitedly, I've already bought the snacks. By then, the entire holiday will depend on the Truman's World that we've created for the two of them. One only knows how to make money, and the other is a bookworm. I wonder if there will be any sparks between them. Tian, what are you worried about? Wei Yan asked. Bai Tian said seriously, I just feel that this isn't good. What if we scare them? I don't think so. There are surveillance cameras at the scene. We'll all be watching. Don't worry. You're too timid. Also, the reward we gave out is quite a lot. A holiday can let her earn 200,000 yuan. If she knows the truth, she'll probably laugh like crazy. Chapter 53-48. In Tao Jijia's opinion, 200,000 yuan was really a lot. If not for the fact that she was afraid that her classmates would look down on her, she really wanted to participate in such a game herself and earn so much money for free. Tao Jijia did not come from a poor family, nor was she from a special family. Her parents were both salaried workers. They lived in a city that was neither too big nor too small. Their monthly income added up to more than 10,000 yuan, but less than 20,000 yuan. Her parents had always thought that Tao Jijia was promising since she was young. She was pretty, had a sweet mouth, and had good grades. Therefore, no matter what Tao Jijia needed, they would try their best to satisfy her. In their opinion, their daughter should be raised well. What other families' daughters had, their daughter could not lack. According to Tao Jijia, the students in this school had good family conditions, especially those in her class. Moreover, food and drinks were more expensive in big cities. She also needed a lot of money to maintain relationships. Therefore, Tao Jijia's monthly living expenses were 7,000 yuan, which was already more than most college students. 7,000 yuan a month was almost half of her parents' income. However, they did not think that there was a problem. Tao Jijia would be successful sooner or later. When she graduated and got a job, her salary would not be a mere 7,000 yuan. Their thinking was not wrong. As long as Tao Jijia studied seriously in this school and studied well, her future job would indeed be more than 7,000 yuan. However, they neglected one thing. Tao Jijia was used to the lives of the rich. 7,000 yuan was not enough for her. Her spending level seriously exceeded her family's income. That was not necessarily a good thing. Everything she had was not cheap. She liked to talk about branded clothes and cosmetics with her classmates. She also gradually understood that it was not easy to rely on her own efforts to climb up the social ladder. However, there was a shortcut on campus. That was to find a rich boyfriend and lock him in. The best would be to get married after graduation and get pregnant after marriage. Then, she would not have to suffer in this life. Now, she was using the money her parents gave her to build herself. After a whole semester of hard work, she really found a rich second-generation boyfriend. At present, the relationship between the two of them was quite good. She often went to parties with her boyfriend. They were all people of the same social class. That made Tao Jiejia want to blend in. Speaking of which, one of the masterminds of the game on the isolated island was Tao Jiejia's rich boyfriend, Chen Kangol. Chen Kangol also had a good friend who was also in the class. His name was Du Li, and he had been pursuing Tanghua since the first year of university. He was used to seeing the gorgeous roses in the big city. The sudden appearance of a different flower attracted his attention. Many people thought that the original owner was the kind of person who was short of money. After all, she would stand for 200 or 300 yuan every week until her legs went soft. Du Li also thought that as long as he had enough money, he would definitely be able to get Tanghua. From the very beginning, he would have been able to get Tanghua to agree in a month at most. However, it had been more than a year now, and all of Tanghua's pursuers had returned in failure. Du Li was no exception. It was also by chance that the group of people thought of playing this game. They felt that since Tanghua didn't want Du Li's money and didn't accept expensive gifts, she was probably a little aloof. She loved money so much. How could she not like money? When the game was over, they would give her some rewards. Among them, most of the rewards were given by the few masterminds. Chapter 53-49. These people wanted to see Tanghua's panicked appearance on the isolated island. They also wanted to see the anger she would feel when she realized that it was all a trap and that everything was fake. When the other party was angry, they would take out the reward. Her expression would definitely be very colorful. As for the bookworm Mu Xiaoning, it was a temporary uprising. They felt that it was not fun to leave Tanghua alone on the island, so they found her a companion. Maybe she could even have some sparks with this bookworm. Unexpectedly, in addition to the accident, they also suffered retribution from the bookworm Mu Xiaoning. I'm going out later. It's Friday today, so I won't be back tonight. Tao Jiejia sat in front of the mirror and put on makeup. Kong Lu called me earlier and said that I have to attend a friend's birthday party. Okay, Wei Yan said. Bai Tian said, be careful. Tao Jiejia smiled and responded. Bai Tian was always so timid. Why would she need to be careful when going out with her boyfriend? At 9:00 in the evening, Tanghua returned to the dormitory from her part-time job. Only Bai Tian and Wei Yan were there. Hearing her return, Wei Yan was still staring at the computer and had no intention of turning around. Bai Tian said a few words to Tanghua. Tanghua, are you going out tomorrow? Yes, I've already made an appointment. I have to earn back my living expenses next week. In fact, the original owner had saved a little money. Although it was not much, it could be used for emergencies. She did not plan to use the money she saved. If there was an emergency, she could still use it. You work part-time every weekend. Aren't you tired? Hearing Bai Tian's words, Tanghua looked back at the young girl sitting by the bed and replied, I'm tired. How can I not be tired? But if I don't work, I have no money. Without money, I can't eat. My tuition fees are still on loan. I can't owe more money. This was the first time Tangwa mentioned that her tuition fees were on loan. This surprised Bai Tian. She looked like a little princess who had never experienced the hardships of life and had grown up in the palm of someone's hand. Your tuition fees are on loan too. Your parents don't pay for your tuition fees. That's too much. From Bai Tian's point of view, parents who didn't pay for their children's school fees were extremely evil. How could there be such annoying parents in this world? If her parents didn't pay her tuition, she would ignore them for the rest of her life. Tangwa saw that Bai Tian was angry and shocked, but she just smiled. There were many people like Bai Tian in this world who didn't know the hardships of the world. My parents are very good to me. They raised me up and even sent me to university. They have done their duty. I was the one who asked for the tuition loan. If they really have to pay me, then they can only eat salted vegetables and white rice every day. Even so, they always ask me if I have money to spend. They will give me money, but I don't want it. My mother's health isn't very good. She's not working now. Only my father works at home. My grandmother is sick too. Now she needs a sum of money to buy medicine every month. Bai Tian almost said, "Why is your family so poor? Why did they have to raise a child when they were so poor? How could one raise a child without money?" When he heard the latter part of the sentence, he instinctively felt that it wasn't appropriate to say that. He opened his mouth but didn't know what to say for a moment. "I've never heard you talk about this in the past. Bai Tian, from what you said, it sounds like your parents are quite good to you." "Of course they are very good. Otherwise, would I have been able to grow up well and get into this university?" Chapter 5350. Tangguo looked at Bai Tian's eyes and knew that she was a little princess who had been spoiled since she was young. It was normal that she didn't know about this. Everyone's life was different. Some people would spend their entire lives struggling with the hardships of life, while others would never be able to see this side of life in their entire lives. The original owner never complained about fate because there were people more miserable than her in this world. Although she had a mother who was in poor health and couldn't work to earn money. However, her mother could cook a pot of delicious food and take care of her in every possible way. She made sure that she was clean and tidy. Her father wasn't very capable and was only at the bottom of the working class. He received a salary of a few thousand yuan every month and couldn't buy her all kinds of beautiful and fun gifts. But before she went to university, her father would send her to school and then to work every day. After school, he would pick her up. She had a sick grandmother and spent half of the family's income every month. To her, it wasn't a burden. When her grandmother wasn't so sick, the clothes and shoes she wore were all made by her grandmother. Whenever her grandmother saw a beautiful style, she would think about it and make it for her. Actually, at that time, her classmates were all very envious of her. So, although their family wasn't rich and they were going through a very difficult life, they were all happy. The original owner had been working hard to not let herself down and not let down the people in her family who loved her. She wanted to get into a good university and have a good job in the future to change the current situation of her family. She saved a sum of money because she was afraid that her family would suddenly need money. She wanted to give it to her family directly, but with her parents' personalities, they definitely wouldn't want it. At first, her parents were very sad that she had to work part-time to earn living expenses. They felt that it was too tiring. But when they saw that she could really do it, they gradually felt relieved. So, her family was really good. It wasn't that those people thought that her family was harsh on her and didn't give her tuition fees or living expenses. The original owner didn't say it because there was no need to say it to these people. Their experiences were different. Although they were in the same space, they lived in different worlds. They wouldn't understand. If she said it, it would just become a point for others to talk about. She was very strong, but sometimes she was sensitive and had low self-esteem. As a young girl who wasn't even 20 years old, she more or less had some face. She didn't like people always talking about her family. Tanghua was removing her makeup, so the dormitory was a little quiet. Bai Tian didn't know what to say. She had never met such a family before. In fact, she really felt that if she did not have enough financial strength, it would be better not to raise a child. Otherwise, it would be as tough as Tanghua. Just thinking about it made her feel a little suffocated. If her children were to suffer like this, she would definitely be very sad and feel that she was incompetent. Tanghua looked at her and knew that she didn't understand, but she didn't bother to say anything. After all, their identities meant that they were from two different worlds. After removing her makeup and washing up, Tanghua pulled down the bed curtain and lay down. She was going to be forced to make a profit as soon as she came over. She hadn't even told her friends in the group yet. Thinking about how she had to go out early the next morning, she felt tired. However, given the current situation, she couldn't find another way to make money, so she could only do this for the time being. She would think of other ways to make money after the island game was settled. Chapter 53-51. School bell, everyone, I've arrived in the new world. Let's check in. Margaret, sure enough, she didn't come to the magic world again. There's no love. Forget it, I'm used to it. School bell, how's the new world? School bell, it's a modern world. I'm currently a sophomore. Tanghua briefly told the story of this world to the people in the group. As usual, after chatting for a while, she went to sleep. Margaret, when will Margaret be able to wait for the school bell to appear? Fortunately, I have a long life. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to wait. Margaret, it's all thanks to Margaret being a genius that her lifespan can continue to extend. Mo Yuntian, speaking of which, time should pass slower on your side. It probably hasn't been many years. Qi Xiao, yes, as long as Margaret isn't in the group, we'll wait for her for several years. She said that she hasn't been there for half a day. Ziyun, so it's not that Margaret can wait, but that we've been waiting for hundreds of years, and she's only been waiting for a few days. Margaret, you can't make friends if you talk like this. At least, Margaret doesn't want to be friends with you. On Saturday, Tanghua worked for half a day in the morning. On the weekend, she worked for the whole day. It was rare that she had work to do on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. After working for 3 days, she earned a total of 500 yuan, which was already a considerable income for the original owner. Anyway, she couldn't spend so much money in a week, and she could save more than half. On the weekend evening, she went back to school. At this time, the local students who had gone home gradually returned to school. She got off the bus and walked to the school gate. There were still a lot of people at this time, and the school gate was a little crowded. The snack street not far outside was already brightly lit and people came and went. Going out shopping was something that the original owner couldn't do even once in half a year. First, she didn't have time. Second, the food on the street was too delicious. She was afraid that she couldn't resist the temptation to spend money to buy food. So she didn't go out shopping. The rest of the time was basically reading and planning for her future. It wasn't that she hadn't thought of starting a business and selling some things in school. Not to mention that there were already people doing this, just talking about the time, she might not be able to care about it. After all, her main purpose was to study. She couldn't lose the big picture for the small things. If that happened, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. After a busy day, she was a little tired. Fortunately, she could still practice her inner force at night and relax her muscles. Tanghua. Just as she took a few steps into the school gate, she heard a voice. She stood still and looked around, looking for the person who called her. This voice sounded a little unfamiliar. She searched her mind for the owner of this voice, but she couldn't remember who it belonged to. Soon, she found the owner of the voice. He was standing not far behind her, carrying a casual backpack. His hair was a little longer than the average guy's. Her scattered hair almost covered her eyes. Fortunately, the man was wearing a pair of glasses, which blocked his hair so that it wouldn't affect his eyes. When he came closer, Tangua asked, "Enchanting, were you the one who called me just now?" "Yes." Enchanting was much taller than Tangua, but he was dressed in black. He was skinnier and looked gloomy. Tangua was a little surprised that he took the initiative to call her. She was sizing him up inadvertently. Chapter 53-52. In her memory, Enchanting had never taken the initiative to greet the original owner of the body. He still called her by her full name. It should be said that Enchanting didn't like to talk to people. He always sat in the corner of the classroom and didn't communicate with anyone, so he wasn't popular. Now that he had suddenly called her out in public, it was a little strange. "What's the matter?" Enchanting didn't answer. He just took a step and looked back at Tangua, as if he was gesturing for Tangua to follow him. Tangua hurriedly followed him. Enchanting took out a cruise ticket from his pocket. Everyone in the class had one for the class gathering next month. Actually, next month was considered a holiday, so they had time to play this game. "Are you going to the cruise party next month?" It was harder to make Enchanting say so much at once. Tangua realized that something was wrong with Enchanting. This was something that had never happened in his memory. Did the other party know something, or did something happen? "Of course I'm going. Isn't that a party that the whole class can't miss? It's not good to be special alone. There's a lucky draw on the cruise. Maybe I'll be lucky enough to get a prize to take home." The original owner of the body had taken a fancy to the massage chair among the lucky draw prizes on the cruise and wanted to try her luck. If she could get a massage chair, she could take it home for her family to use. She had thought that this was a cruise company's event, but she hadn't known that this was a trap set up by her classmates. "Why? Is there a problem?" "No." Enchanting put the ticket back into his pocket and looked at Tangua with a slightly sluggish gaze. "Please take care of me then." With that, Enchanting left. After a few steps, he turned back and walked to Tangua. "Have you been on a cruise before?" "No," Tangua replied. "Have you sat on it before?" "Yes," Enchanting answered. "You can follow me. Don't be afraid." Perhaps Enchanting felt that he was a little too talkative tonight and said a lot of unnecessary things, so he turned around and left quickly. He had only suddenly seen Tangua and came over to remind her of something. How did he become so talkative? In the darkness, he turned back to look at Tangua, who was still standing in the same spot with a strange expression on her face. Afraid that Tangua would notice him looking back, Enchanting hurriedly turned around and hastened back to the dormitory. Perhaps it was because too much time had passed that he had already forgotten this classmate's personality. That was why he felt that she was a little different from how she was in the past. That's right, they weren't familiar with each other in the first place. Even though they had only spent about 10 days together in that place, it was normal that he didn't know her well. Therefore, it was not strange that she was different. Enchanting touched the ticket in his pocket and pinched it hard. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, and his expression was very strange. Last time, they didn't manage to kill all of them. There was still a fish that escaped the net. Who would have thought that he would return and even return to the beginning? This time, he would first give them a surprise. Then, he would kill them one by one and let them die in a nightmare. Their expressions when they died should be very horrified. This time, there was no outsider called Jiang Yicheng on the island. How could Bai Tian escape? This time, he couldn't let them die so quickly. Otherwise, it wouldn't be painful at all. I feel it too. It's not a natural murderous aura. It's a murderous aura that only exists after killing someone. System, sob sob sob, so scary. Chapter 53-53. Host, do you mean that Mu Xiaoning killed someone? The system figured it out. Don't you feel that something's wrong with him? He never likes to communicate with his classmates and almost never takes the initiative to speak. But tonight, he stopped me and said so much. It's not his style at all. He even deliberately took out the ticket and mentioned the class activity next month. Was Mu Xiaoning transmigrated or reborn? I didn't have much time with him just now, so I don't know. But I'm sure that he probably knows what will happen a month later. He wants to remind me of something, but for some reason, he won't tell me the truth. I'm guessing that he wants to do something a month later. What does he want to do? If he's reborn, he'll most likely wipe out the entire class this time. The system couldn't help but shiver. Thinking of Mu Xiaoning's angry revenge at the end, it was indeed possible. If he's transmigrated, I don't know what the other party will do. He might beat them at their own game and teach them a lesson. The worst-case scenario would be for them to lose their lives on the isolated island. Tanguo paused for a moment before continuing, but just now, I felt a terrible murderous aura from him. Most of the people in the class are dead. Host, are you not going to stop him? I have to. I knew it. Host, you won't let him kill anyone, no matter if he's transmigrated or reborn. If he's reborn, you probably won't let him kill the people in the class. It had to be said that the system still understood Tang Guo a little. If she was still the host who wanted to destroy the world at all times, he wouldn't even ask this question. At that time, not only would she not stop him, she would most likely help him pass the knife. Tang Guo guessed that Mu Xiaoning wasn't simple. As for how he developed such a character, it could be acquired or congenital. If he didn't have some family background and foundation, he wouldn't have been able to live quietly for 20 years and set up such a trap that almost wiped out the entire class. Of course, these weren't important. She was still thinking about what to do on the isolated island. Since Mu Xiaoning was there, she didn't have to do much. She just had to save those people's lives at the critical moment. As for whether or not it would leave a psychological scar, that was not her concern. Everyone was going out to have fun. If something unexpected happened, it would be unexpected. The system felt that it was a little cold tonight. It glanced at Tang Guo, who was removing her makeup, and secretly went to look for Mu Xiaoning. At this moment, Mu Xiaoning was in the dormitory. It looked like he had already washed up. The curtains were drawn, and he was leaning against the bed, playing with his phone. At first, he thought that Mu Xiaoning was just casually surfing the internet for fun. After scanning the internet, he realized that he was too naive. Boss, the island is ready. We're waiting for your orders. Mu Xiaoning, yes. Don't worry, boss. The scene we've set up will definitely be unforgettable. We'll let them spend the most wonderful time of their lives in fear. Mu Xiaoning, okay. This conversation was not in Chinese, but in English. Moreover, this chatting software was not domestic. Mu Xiaoning didn't say much, but the system had already guessed that this was his arrangement. He suspected that Mu Xiaoning had been reborn. He didn't stay for long and quickly floated back to tell Tang Guo about Mu Xiaoning's situation. Chapter 53-54. Dear host, Mu Xiaoning is most likely reborn. That island has been set up by someone. He found someone overseas to do it. This time, he probably wants to do it cleanly. There are so many people in the class. If something really happens to everyone else except for me and him, it doesn't matter if it's done cleanly or not. We will definitely be suspected. Even if we find someone overseas, they will still trace it back to him. He won't be able to escape. Also, he probably didn't choose to do this because he didn't want to escape. He was just unhappy and wanted to take revenge on those people. He's so negative and doesn't leave a way out for himself. He obviously doesn't have much hope in this world. This might have something to do with the environment he grew up in. From the memories, it could be seen that Mu Xiaoning had done well in those 20 years. If he could forget that incident, his life would be bright. However, he still chose to end those people's lives in this way and end his own life at the same time. I'm tired today. I plan to sleep. Tongzi, help me check if Mu Xiaoning had any special experiences. Okay, I'll go take a look first. I'll tell you tomorrow morning. Tang Guo washed up and looked at the time. It was 9:30. She was the only one in the dormitory. The others should have activities, but they would most likely be back before 11. After all, there was a routine dormitory check on Sunday night. After a good night's sleep, Tang Guo woke up on Monday morning. The other 3 roommates were all there. She had class in the morning, so she didn't sleep and slowly got up to tidy up. If she didn't work part-time, the original owner usually didn't know how to put on makeup. She basically just put on some moisturizer and drew her eyebrows. It was simple and fast and wouldn't take up too much time. When she was done tidying up, the other 3 roommates had just gotten up. At this time, she had already gone to the cafeteria for breakfast. To the original owner, the school breakfast was the most cost-effective. It was cheap and easy to eat. She was very active every time she ate breakfast. She usually didn't eat with her roommates. They had different circles and basically didn't play together. She was busier and poorer. Tao Jiejia and the other 2 often ate outside. It was a bit difficult for her to have a meal together. She might have to scrimp and save for many days. It wasn't worth it. Those 3 people also knew about her situation, so they basically wouldn't invite her. When the first year of university had just started, they would invite her to eat together a few times. Later, the original owner refused, saying that her family wasn't very well off and she couldn't go out to eat like that often. Tao Jiejia often talked about this matter with many people, which made the original owner lose face. Of course, she was very busy and didn't have time to care about face, so she could only let the people around her talk. Anyway, everyone in the class knew that she was very poor, and many of them were not very willing to play with her. They felt that it was uncomfortable to play with her, and they also felt that she was a little stingy. She had to calculate everything clearly. However, the original owner still had people who went to class with her. Even if they weren't very sociable, there were still 1 or 2 who could play together. This person was in the same class as her and lived in the dormitory next door. Tang Guo had already arrived at the door of Xiang Wen's dormitory. According to the procedure, she knocked on the door. Xiang Wen, are you done? Let's go down and eat. Coming, right away, I'm still missing an eyebrow. Xiang Wen's voice came from inside. Xiang Wen's family was relatively ordinary. Her monthly living expenses were around 1,500, which was normal for a university student. Chapter 53-55. The dormitory door had already been opened. Tang Guo was standing at the door, watching Xiang Wen busy herself. 2 minutes later, a medium-sized girl with dark skin came to the door with a book. She had put on light makeup. It was winter now, so she was wearing a short white down jacket, a skirt, and leggings. The leggings weren't the thickest kind either. It's too difficult to get out of bed in this weather. I still have class on Monday morning. It's really killing me. Let's go. It'll be very warm after drinking some soy milk or porridge later. Tang Guo said. Xiang Wen didn't think that anything was wrong, nor did she realize that the Tang Guo in front of her was no longer the Tang Guo from before. The original owner of the body and Xiang Wen's friendship was established during military training. From then until now, they basically went to the classroom together and ate together. Xiang Wen's living expenses didn't allow her to go out often to spend extravagantly. She still had to save money to buy other things she needed, so it was very cost-effective to eat in the school cafeteria. The two of them went to the cafeteria, bought breakfast, and started eating. The system was reporting Mu Xiaoning's situation to Tang Guo. Tang Guo listened as she ate. Xiang Wen didn't wake up much and didn't feel like talking in the morning. She ate breakfast quietly and didn't notice that Tang Guo's expression was a little strange. Mu Xiaoning's parents died in an accident. His parents' business was very big both domestically and abroad, and they left behind a rich inheritance. He has a second uncle who is very concerned about his inheritance. Unfortunately, his parents had already made arrangements when they were alive. Mu Xiaoning's custody didn't fall to his second uncle. And if Mu Xiaoning died in an accident, all his assets would be donated. His cousin who played well with him when he was young was just coaxing him, hoping that he would give up all his assets. It's really scary. His playmates all have other motives. No wonder he doesn't want to make friends. Mu Xiaoning is very smart, but he rarely shows his talent. Perhaps it's because there were too many people with bad intentions around him when he was young, so he didn't want to live a high-profile life. He was very simple when it came to food and clothing. No one knew that he had such a large sum of money. When he was able to legally inherit and deal with his own assets, he sold off some of the businesses that he couldn't manage. He only left a part of them for his manager to help him manage. As for the second uncle who coveted his family's assets, he had also used some means to send him to prison. People like his second uncle are more or less a little dirty. If someone deliberately sets him up, it's very easy for him to go to jail. As the host knows, some foreign countries are very strict about tax evasion because this person has spent most of his life. So, he chose to return to China after dealing with those troublesome matters. Yes, he feels that life in China is quieter and he wants to live a peaceful life as an ordinary person. No wonder. Everyone in the class thought that his family background was ordinary. After all, they all knew that his parents were dead. I didn't expect him to be a hidden big shot and quite rich. It was easy for him to set up that island. She felt that in her memory, Mu Xiaoning had only chosen to take revenge 20 years later because he had been trapped on that deserted island for a very long time. The people in the class had clearly chosen that island because it was very desolate and not big. There was no unique scenery on it. When something happened and Mu Xiaoning didn't appear, they were very relieved and thought that Mu Xiaoning had died on that island. Chapter 53-56. After eating breakfast, Tang Guo began her daily life as a college student. Xiang Wen was with her all day long. Through their interactions, she found that Xiang Wen was a good person. She had some small shortcomings, but they were not harmful. Maybe it was because her friendship with the original host wasn't that deep, or maybe it was because of other reasons. Xiang Wen could watch the original host being chosen as the main character of the game and still watch indifferently from the side. Even after the original owner died, Xiang Wen did not reveal anything. She did not find it strange. That was because human nature was like this. Xiang Wen and the original owner were not that close. She would not put herself in danger for a dead original owner. Xiang Wen, the holidays are next month. Will you go to the class cruise party? Now, they were in a library. Xiang Wen did not expect Tang Guo to suddenly ask this. She was stunned. Why do you ask? Aren't you going? It's a cruise ship. It's probably the only time in your life. It's free, and there's a lucky draw. You said that you liked the massage chair and wanted to try your luck. Why? Something happened and you can't go? No, I'm just asking. There are so many students in the class. Will they all go? Didn't the class monitor say that everyone has to go this time? It's free food and drinks, and there's a lucky draw. We can't let down the students who stopped this party, right? They're paying for it. If we don't go, it'll be too embarrassing. We don't know how to be human. Tang Guo paused. She inadvertently observed Xiang Wen from the corner of her eye. She found that Xiang Wen was very nervous. She sighed softly. It seemed that Xiang Wen had known about this for a long time and was in cahoots with those people. It's just that I haven't seen my parents and grandmother for a semester. I miss them a little. I was planning to spend half of the holiday working part-time to earn living expenses and the rest of the holiday to go back and take care of my grandmother and spend time with my family. Tang Guo sighed. This is a half-month cruise. When we come back, the holiday will be over. Xiang Wen saw that Tang Guo did not want to go, so she quickly persuaded her. She said that such an opportunity was really rare. And if she really didn't go, it wouldn't be good for her in class in the future. In the end, Tang Guo reluctantly said that it was better to go. She couldn't disrespect her classmate. She saw Xiang Wen heave a sigh of relief and didn't say anything else. She held the book in her hand and started reading. He wondered if this game would be beneficial to Xiang Wen. If that was the case, Xiang Wen would definitely meet with those people when she was free and talk about how she had almost given up. Tongzi, help me keep an eye on Xiang Wen. See if she has any contact with Du Li and the others. Now that he thought about it, in his memory, Xiang Wen had indeed spoken up for Du Li many times. Such a situation seemed to be quite common. At night, Tang Guo returned to the dormitory. The system spoke to her. Dear host, Xiang Wen sent a message to Du Li. It's about how you almost didn't want to go today. Let me forward it to you. Xiang Wen, today, Tang Guo suddenly talked about the cruise next month. I almost didn't want to go. Du Li, what about now? Xiang Wen, I persuaded her for a long time. I told her that it wasn't good to do this and that it would disrespect her classmate. Only then did she give up the idea of not going. My mouth was dry from all the talking. Du Li, thank you for your hard work. You have to pay more attention to this. She must participate in this game. Then, he sent her a red packet. Xiang Wen, don't worry. I'll be watching. When the time comes, you'll definitely save her life and win her heart. You're such a devoted person. I don't know what she's worried about. Chapter 53-57. After reading Xiang Wen and Du Li's conversation, Tang Guo finally understood a little. Du Li had given Xiang Wen benefits, so Xiang Wen probably thought that this was a harmless game. Since she knew that this was a game, she knew that the original host would make a fool of herself. Saying things like a hero saving the beauty and winning the beauty's heart were probably just words to flatter Du Li. At the end of the day, the original host and Xiang Wen were just strangers who had met by chance. They weren't reliable friends. If a true friend knew that their good friend was going to encounter such a thing, they would definitely be angry and think of ways to stop it. They wouldn't think that Du Li was doing this for the original host's good. Instead, they would think that Du Li was a scumbag who couldn't get her, so he planned this game to make a fool of himself. If nothing happened and the original host was still alive, after finding out that this was a game, she might become the joke of the class many years later. Tang Guo didn't test Xiang Wen again. There was no need. The system showed her the conversation between Xiang Wen and Du Li. Xiang Wen had received many benefits and would often say things like why the original host didn't agree when Du Li was so good. There was a hint of jealousy in her words. Mu Xiaoning didn't talk to Tang Guo again, but when they were in class, Tang Guo could feel his gaze sweeping over her from time to time. If it weren't for the special circumstances, she really wanted to walk over and talk to Mu Xiaoning. She was afraid that their interaction would affect her future plans and ruin Mu Xiaoning's plans. How bad would that be? However, one day, she received a friend request from Mu Xiaoning. After she accepted the friend request, no one spoke for the first day. On the third day, when it was almost bedtime, Mu Xiaoning suddenly sent her a message. Mu Xiaoning, are you asleep? Tang Guo, no, what's the matter? Mu Xiaoning, no. Tang Guo, oh. System, what kind of stupid chat is this? Are you sure you won't die if you chat like this? He could tell that something was wrong with Mu Xiaoning. How could Great Host be so impatient to talk so much to a boring person? This boring person's identity was obviously not ordinary. He made a blind guess. It must be that guy. Mu Xiaoning, are you sleepy? Tang Guo, I'm fine. Mu Xiaoning, you want to sleep? Tang Guo, play with your phone for a while. Mu Xiaoning, what game? Tang Guo, just browsing. Mu Xiaoning, what do you think the future will be like? Tang Guo looked at the long message and thought for a while. Then she replied, he should be very happy and busy. Tang Guo replied as the original owner of the body. For the original owner, it should be like this. With a decent job and a decent salary, he could finally change his family's life. Of course, he was busy and happy. Mu Xiaoning looked at this sentence and was a little confused. What was the meaning of this? Being busy meant being tired. If you were tired, would you still be happy? What was happiness? Ever since his parents had passed away, he hadn't felt it. After his parents passed away, his world was filled with fake smiles and deceit. Mu Xiaoning, I'm going to sleep. Mu Xiaoning, sleep early. Mu Xiaoning, good night. From that night onwards, Mu Xiaoning would send Tang Guo a message every time before he went to sleep. The two of them talked about very nonsensical topics. The system watched with relish. Since this was that guy, Great Host would definitely not allow him to kill the people in this class. Otherwise, how could the two of them live a carefree life in the future? Time passed in the blink of an eye. The first semester of the second year ended. Chapter 53-58. The students from the other classes left the school one after another and rushed back to their homes all over the country. Only Tang Guo's class stayed in school for the time being. On the third day of the holiday, all the students in the class appeared at the school gate and were taken by a bus to the port to board a cruise ship. The cruise ship would last for half a month, so all the students had brought enough daily necessities and clothes. It was winter now, so Tang Guo had to bring a suitcase to carry winter clothes and some daily necessities. What a big cruise ship! It has so many floors. I thought it was a small cruise ship, but I didn't expect it to be so big and luxurious. Xiang Wen pulled her suitcase and stood beside Tang Guo. Now that they are lining up, the students are walking slowly, so Xiang Wen kept whispering in Tang Guo's ear about what she saw in front of her. Tang Guo glanced at the crowd and found Mu Xiaoning's position. He was still wearing black clothes and a black fishing hat that basically covered his eyes. He was pulling a black suitcase in his hand. Perhaps he sensed Tang Guo's gaze, but he raised his head and looked at Tang Guo. Tang Guo didn't dodge. Instead, she looked at him. A few minutes later, everyone boarded the cruise ship. After counting the number of people, they were assigned rooms. Then, the staff on the cruise ship introduced the cruise ship. Xiangwen, who was standing beside Tangguo, was very excited. It was the first time she had been to such a luxurious place since she was young. There were still many excited students in the class, but their expressions were very calm. There were also many students who were used to all this. Based on Bai Tian, Wei Yan, Chen Kangel, and Du Li's background, this place was ordinary. It wasn't a place worth being amazed. After all, they had seen more luxurious and spectacular scenes than this. As for Tao Jiejie, she was actually very excited. Although she often went to some big places with her boyfriend, Chen Kangel, it was the first time she was on a cruise ship. Moreover, it was such a big and luxurious cruise ship. However, she had always been good at pretending. She tried her best to look indifferent, as if she had been to such places countless times. In fact, her little disguise was useless. This was the first time he had experienced something like this. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell with a single glance, but no one would say it out loud. Everyone, let's rest first. There's still a program in the evening. If you don't want to rest, you can go to the other floors to see if there's anything you want to play. Just now, the service staff has already introduced it. There are many fun places here. Since we're here, of course we have to have fun. Du Li held the microphone and said to everyone. Tangguo watched as the crowd gradually dispersed and returned to her room. According to the plan of Du Li and the others, they would create a small accident tomorrow night and put something in their cups in advance. After she and Mu Xiaoning fainted, they would ask someone to drive the cruise ship to that deserted island. The higher-ups had already arranged everything. In reality, these people had no idea that Mu Xiaoning had long taken control of the entire island. The only people who were allowed to play on the island were this group of students who didn't mind causing trouble. There are no surveillance cameras in the room, right? No, Madam Host, this room is very safe. If you're worried, I'll block the signal for you. Chapter 53-59. Okay. After the system blocked the signal, Tangguo rummaged through the system space and finally found some array discs. Since she was going to play, she might as well make it big. She had plenty of time to play slowly. It would be good to spend more time on the island. She had already informed her family that she would work part-time during the holidays and would not go back this year. Tangguo found the array discs mainly to throw them around the island so that no one would be able to find this place. She wanted to avoid unexpected accidents midway through the game. She did not want to kill these people. She just had the same idea as them. They had been classmates for more than a year. She just wanted to play a small game with them. She threw the array discs and Mu Xiaoning was in charge of playing games with them. It sounded like a good idea. Nothing happened on the first day. At this time, many students were enjoying the sea breeze on the deck, taking photos, playing cards, playing games, drinking coffee, and doing a series of leisurely activities. There were also some students who were playing some games on other levels. Other than the necessary group activities and meals, Tangguo was in the room. Her actions were similar to the original owners, so no one suspected her. As for Xiangwen, she went everywhere to play. She did not intend to force Tangguo to play with her. It was finally the second night. Tangguo was sitting at the dining table. Tonight was a group activity, a seafood dinner. Many students had never seen the seafood on the table. The price was frighteningly expensive. Tangguo glanced at it hurriedly. She felt that Du Li and the others were really willing to spend a lot of money to play this game. Mu Xiaoning was different from what she remembered. He was not sitting in the corner. Instead, he was sitting beside her. When Du Li raised his glass and everyone was about to stand up and clink glasses, Tangguo picked up the glass. It was filled with drinks. Like everyone else, she drank the drink in the glass. Then, everyone continued to enjoy the delicious seafood. She noticed that many people were looking at her and Mu Xiaoning from time to time. Even Xiang Wen looked a little nervous and expectant when she saw her. Needless to say, her roommate's expressions didn't look very natural. Do you find it strange? At this moment, Mu Xiaoning's gloomy voice rang in Tang Guo's ears. He placed his hand on the wine glass and gently swirled the red wine inside. The wine was about to sway out of the glass, but when he pulled back, it all fell back into the glass. He was still wearing the black hat, which covered most of his face. It was difficult to see the emotions in his eyes. From Tang Guo's position, she could only see Mu Xiaoning's tall nose and beautifully curved lips. She clearly saw Mu Xiaoning's lips curl up slightly, as if he had discovered something fun. His fingers were slender and slightly white. Perhaps it was because he kept them in his pocket all year round and didn't see much light. What are you talking about? Tang Guo pretended not to understand. Strange. Didn't you notice? Why is everyone looking at us from time to time? Mu Xiaoning raised his head gently, revealing his eyes. They didn't look like the eyes of a boy who was less than 20 years old. It was too calm. No, it should be said that it was dead silent. There was no light at all. Occasionally, there would be a flash of playful interest. It meant that he was here to play and didn't want to live a good life in this world. Or rather, he had experienced too many disappointments. He couldn't see the beauty of this world and only felt bored. Chapter 5360. Did they find out about our chat? Mu Xiaoning hadn't expected Tang Guo to answer like that. His dark eyes froze for a moment, and he asked, "Did you tell anyone else about this?" "What I mean is, did you share this with your good friend?" Mu Xiaoning added as if he felt that his tone was a little stiff. Tang Guo held back her smile and pretended to ask strangely, "Of course not. I'm not that free. Weren't you the one who shared it with others? What are you thinking? How could I possibly show this to others?" Mu Xiaoning said in a deep voice. Soon, his tone changed a little, as if he was trying to control himself. "I'm not that kind of person." "I believe you," Mu Xiaoning said. "I don't mean to blame you." "I know." Mu Xiaoning lowered his hat and continued to swirl his wine glass. "Do you think they're looking at us strangely because we're chatting?" "I thought so before, but I don't think so now." "Do you know why?" Mu Xiaoning didn't look up again. His voice was very low and deep, as if he was being suppressed by the entire sea. "Perhaps they're thinking of some show to mock us. They're always so bored." "That's possible." Tang Guo replied, "It seems to be true. We usually don't participate in class activities. Maybe that's the case." Mu Xiaoning didn't say anything else. Instead, he fell silent. Actually, he was a little hesitant about bringing Tang Guo to the island. After all, what he had done should be very scary and bloody to her. It might scare her. Actually, he really wanted to bring her up and let her see with her own eyes how scared those people were. He looked up again and saw that Tang Guo was already looking elsewhere. He sized her up, gripped his wine glass tightly, and lowered his head. It was about time. She wasn't suitable for such a game at all. Forget it. Let her stay on the cruise ship and have fun. Her life was filled with hope and anticipation, unlike his. This game would end everyone's lives here, including his. Only she could continue to live. Mu Xiaoning took out his phone and kept moving his fingers. No one knew that he was assigning the next task and how to play with this group of people. In fact, the two of them had only interacted for about a minute. At this moment, Tang Guo had already noticed that her classmates were more or less feeling unwell, as if they were about to fall asleep at any moment. At this moment, for some reason, the cruise ship suddenly shook. She saw that the faces of the people around her were filled with fear and disbelief. Many people were shouting, "What's going on?" Dooley, Chun Kangol, and the others looked calm, but the cruise ship still shook violently. At this moment, uncertainty finally appeared on their faces. This kind of shaking is because this hall has been specially set up. In fact, the cruise ship is still as stable as Mount Tai as it moves towards the island. The system explained in Tangua's ear. Mu Xiaoning probably wants everyone to believe that an accident happened on the cruise ship. Sure enough, the hall began to shake more and more violently. Many people began to vomit from the shaking and then fainted. Seeing that it was about time, Tangguo also fainted. What is Mu Xiaoning doing? He's leaning against the chair. He seems to have fainted, but his eyes are secretly looking at Madam Host. He seems to be very worried about you. Madam Host, believe it or not, if you fall to the ground now, he will probably come over to help you. Forget it. I'm already lying down. It'll be weird if I fall again. Chapter 53-61. After an unknown period of time, perhaps because Mu Xiaoning had confirmed that everyone in the hall had fainted, the hall finally stopped shaking. Mu Xiaoning walked over to Tangguo first. After confirming that she was fine, he felt much more at ease. Boss, what do we do now? Throw everyone else on that island except her. Mu Xiaoning's tone was still as low as ever. It was as if an ethereal voice had suddenly appeared in the silent night. It was extremely frightening. Okay, boss. Do you want to bring her back to her room? The tall, dark-skinned man had already walked over to Tanggua and was about to carry her when he was suddenly stopped by an arm. He looked at Mu Xiaoning in confusion. Let me do it. System, boss, you look very thin and small. The dark-skinned man was a little hesitant. His boss had given him a lot of money, so of course he had to help his boss settle this small matter beautifully. He could lift an Asian little girl with one finger, but his boss was so thin and small. He felt that he couldn't do it. System, ha 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 ha, I can. Mu Xiaoning looked up. His unquestionable gaze made the dark-skinned man take 2 steps back and make an inviting gesture. When he saw Mu Xiaoning carry Tanggua, he even flattered him and hurriedly followed behind Mu Xiaoning. Tanggua tried her best to hold back her smile when she heard the dark-skinned man's praise. If her tolerance skills were any worse, she might have been discovered. Mu Xiaoning put Tanggua back in her room and had no intention of going out again. Instead, he sat on a chair in the room and leaned against the window, looking at the rippling sea outside. Boss, what's different about her? The dark-skinned man's sudden question broke Mu Xiaoning's silence. You talk too much. I'm just asking. Is she the boss's sweetheart? Mu Xiaoning, boss, you'll be suspected if you make so many people disappear at once. Mu Xiaoning, you're paid to do things. Why do you care about the boss? I'm just reminding you kindly. Mu Xiaoning, talk less and do more. Will the boss be with her in the future? The dark-skinned man wasn't threatened by Mu Xiaoning's words at all. He had taken on many jobs and could understand people like Mu Xiaoning. This little boss wasn't really angry and didn't refute, so he agreed with his answer. No, Mu Xiaoning said as he looked at the surface of the sea. The big dark-skinned man's curiosity was ignited. Why? You two look so compatible. Why isn't the boss with her? Do you know the story of a drop of ink and a cup of pure water? The dark-skinned man, boss, you can explain. A drop of ink will make a cup of pure water impure. I am that drop of ink. The big black man scratched his head. Boss, have you heard of the story of a drop of ink and an ocean? Mu Xiaoning, a drop of ink is nothing to an ocean. Once the ink enters the ocean, it will turn into seawater. No one will be able to discover its past, and no one will know that it was once ink. You're not suitable for this line of work. Chapter 5362. The big black man said, "Boss, I think you've really misunderstood something. I'm in a legitimate business. At most, I'll evade taxes. I helped you set up this cruise ship, set up these scenes, and the island. I didn't participate in anything else. Earn some hard-earned money and get those people to the island. Then, my mission will be over. What you do next has nothing to do with me. With this generous salary, my wife and children will have a good life." Mu Xiaoning fell silent again. "Old He, go out. You're giving me a headache." Old He smiled at Mu Xiaoning and hurried out. At the door, he turned back and said, "Boss, that beautiful Asian girl might be your C. Actually, it's better to throw yourself into her arms. Your life will definitely be very exciting. If you talk nonsense again, I'll deduct your money." Old He quickly slipped away. Mu Xiaoning felt uncomfortable all over. He shouldn't have let Old He speak. His gaze fell on Tang Guo for a long time. He maintained the same posture and didn't intend to speak. That Old He is quite fun. He knows how to talk. The system was amused by the conversation just now. Host, Mu Xiaoning is doubting life. But he won't turn back. Look, he's calming down and thinking about what to do next. He has no intention of living well. Then, host, work harder and assimilate him quickly. Then, he won't let his imagination run wild. I'm guessing that when the time comes, he'll be very glad that he chose the other path. In the middle of the night, the cruise ship arrived at the island. Si Jiao Lao He led some people to move his classmates to the island. The system was scanning the island and telling Tang Guo the situation there. This place has been set up to look like an abandoned town. It's modern, but no one lives there. It looks especially scary. The host's classmates were thrown to the beach and not brought to the town. According to Mu Xiaoning and Old He's conversation, they'll drive the cruise ship away and dock at another island far away from here. The signal on the cruise ship will be temporarily blocked. This is a smart setting. After more than a month, the signal will be restored, and the host will be able to call for help. There was a lot of food on the cruise ship, enough for the host to eat. Old He and the others will leave in a speedboat. A month later, they will confirm whether the cruise ship can be found. If not, they will leak the information to the police according to Mu Xiaoning's instructions. You, dear host, Mu Xiaoning has already arranged your escape route. It seems like he doesn't intend to come down from that island. Previously, I also found out that if his death is confirmed, all his assets will be disposed of. In addition, Mu Xiaoning has anonymously sponsored your living expenses and tuition fees starting from next semester. Also, he has contacted a company for you based on your major. After you graduate, there will be a company that will conduct an on-campus recruitment for you. This guy can kill people with a conversation, but he's not careless at all when doing things. He's considered all aspects, which is quite touching. For the sake of his hard work, I won't be jealous of him for the time being. After listening to the system, Tang Guo fell silent. She didn't expect Mu Xiaoning to do so many things in such a short time. Originally, Mu Xiaoning wanted to bring you to the island, but he later considered that it might traumatize you, so he gave up on the idea. He didn't admit it, but he was greatly moved by the host. This guy can't be handsome for more than 3 seconds. Chapter 5363. Madam Host, your classmates have all been moved to the island. Mu Xiaoning has also gone over. He just finished talking to Lao Hei. Lao Hei is preparing to bring people to the designated location. Tang Guo did not leave the room. She stood by the window. 3 minutes later, the cruise ship started moving and headed in another direction. She planned to wait for Lao Hei and the others to leave before driving the cruise ship back to prevent the news from leaking. That would not be fun. The system kept staring at the island and kept reporting Mu Xiaoning's situation to her. In that empty town that has been set up, there's a room specially used by Mu Xiaoning. It's considered a secret room. He didn't lock up your classmates and went straight to the secret room. He's currently eating. Mu Xiaoning is now checking the surveillance cameras in the town. He has pointed out all the locations. His secret room is densely packed with small screens that cover almost every location in the town. The system exclaimed in surprise. Furthermore, these surveillance cameras are perfectly hidden. Coupled with the fact that the town is empty and dilapidated, it gives off a desolate and eerie feeling. Therefore, no one would have thought that there might be surveillance cameras everywhere in this town. Not only are there surveillance cameras, but every room in the town is hidden with killing intent. After watching the surveillance cameras, this guy went to check the room again. It seems like he's planning to practice in advance. 3 hours later, the cruise ship was docked beside another island. Lao Hei did not come in to check on Tang Guo's situation. This was because Tang Guo's room had been locked. No matter if it was from the outside or from the inside, they would have to use Tang Guo's fingerprints. This was a room that Mu Xiaoning had gotten someone to specially decorate when he realized that Tang Guo was different. Even if Lao Hei had professional ethics, he still did not trust Lao Hei. Everything had been prepared. Madam Host, Lao Hei, and the others have left. Okay, we'll set off in an hour. We should be able to reach there before daybreak. When we left, I already threw down an array disc at the edge of the island. We can park the cruise ship there openly. There's no problem at all. No one will find out. Tang Guo did not ask the system to remove the signal jammer on the cruise ship. It was good that the signal was temporarily blocked. Actually, this cruise ship was not the one in her memory. Mu Xiaoning had intercepted the message when Du Li and the others contacted the cruise company. Speaking of which, the cruise company that Du Li and the others had contacted at the beginning was actually Mu Xiaoning's people. The cruise ship returned to the island very quickly. It only took a little more than 2 hours. Tang Guo docked the cruise ship next to the island. At this time, the island was surrounded by a formation. The people inside could not see the situation here. She didn't appear directly in the class, but chose to stay in a blind spot. From this position, he could see the students lying on the beach. He didn't know when these people would wake up. Dear host, what do you plan to do when the sun rises? Has he been hiding in the dark, or has he appeared with them? Of course I'm with them. If I hide in the dark, they will subconsciously suspect that I'm the one behind this. Tang Guo leaned against a stone slab and said faintly, if all of us are here, then they will believe that they have experienced something and not someone playing a game. The sun rose. Tang Guo heard footsteps and raised her head slightly. She saw a black figure walking toward the beach from afar. Chapter 53-64. Mu Xiaoning walked towards the sleeping students and found an empty space to sit down. He was still wearing the black hat from yesterday, which covered most of his face. The sky gradually brightened, and the morning sun appeared on the sea. The red morning sun made him raise his head slightly to look at it, and it also dyed his face red. It had to be said that the scenery on the sea was very beautiful. It was almost impossible to see such a beautiful scene in the bustling city. Mu Xiaoning glanced at those who had not woken up yet. These people were not worthy of such a beautiful scenery. He thought of Tang Guo again. It was a pity that she did not see such a beautiful scene. That guy looks like he's thinking about life. Dear host, what do you think he's thinking when he looked at the beach and then at his classmates? Is he trying to wake them up to enjoy the beautiful scenery? The system asked blankly. Do you think he'll be so kind as to ask these people to enjoy such a beautiful scenery? I don't think so. Then what does he mean? He's probably thinking that this place is so beautiful, and these people are not worthy. The system carefully recalled Mu Xiaoning's expression and suddenly understood. Now that the dear host said so, it seemed to be the case. The students in the class were woken up by the glaring sunlight. They shivered when they woke up because it was too cold. Everyone was stunned when they saw where they were. Where is this? Why did we wake up on the beach? Where's our cruise ship? Why can't we see our cruise ship? There were all kinds of doubts and worried voices in the crowd. They all looked at Dooley and the other main characters who were leading the game. When they saw Dooley sitting there in deep thought, as if she did not know what was going on, they were all dumbfounded. Bai Tian said, I remember that before we fainted, the cruise ship seemed to be shaking violently. It seemed like it was going to flip over. After that, I lost consciousness. It should be morning now. Wei Yan looked calm, but it could be seen from her eyes that she was still worried. I don't have my watch and phone with me. My body is dry. It can be deduced that we didn't fall into the water. Tao Jiejia found Qin Kangol in the crowd and hugged his arm tightly. She asked in a low voice, Kangol, is this trouble caused by you changing your mind at the last minute? No. Qin Kangol said with certainty, I definitely didn't change the plan. If there were any changes on Du Li's side, there's no way he wouldn't tell us. I feel like something's not right. I don't know where this place is, and I don't have my phone with me. Seeing the uncertainty on Qin Kangol's face, Tao Jiejia panicked. Could something have really happened? Can you find a way to contact the outside world? Tao Jiejia asked again. Qin Kangol said, I'll ask if anyone else has a cell phone. Students, all of you have a cell phone on you. Maybe there was an accident. If you have a cell phone, take it out and contact the people outside. Things shouldn't have turned out this way. Now that everything was out of his control, Qin Kangol's first thought was to contact the outside and get out as soon as possible. Even though it was early in the morning and he was bathed in the warm sun, he still felt uneasy. He kept feeling that the surroundings were chilly and gave him a very uncomfortable feeling. Chapter 53-65. Dooley, you didn't change the plan, right? Qin Kangol brought Tao Jiejia to Dooley and asked softly. Dooley's expression was unsettled. No. Looks like something really happened. Qin Kangol's expression was ugly. Let's see who has a cell phone first. We need to get in touch with the outside world as soon as possible. As for playing games, they didn't even know where they were now. It was better not to think about it. After looking around, none of the 50 students in the class had a cell phone on them. Not to mention a cell phone, they didn't even have a watch. They only had themselves and the clothes they were wearing to protect themselves from the cold. All of their belongings were not with them. In front of them was an endless sea. Behind them was a forest. They didn't know what was in the forest. It was a sunny day, but it made them feel cold all over. Some people couldn't sit still anymore. They ran to Dooley and Qin Kangol to ask what was going on. Mu Xiaoning was still sitting in the corner. He didn't say a word, as if he didn't care about all this. No one felt that there was anything wrong with his behavior. Dooley and Qin Kangol finally calmed everyone down. Then, they did a head count and realized that Tang Guo was missing. They instinctively looked at Mu Xiaoning. Seeing him sitting quietly at the side, they quickly looked elsewhere. Where's Tanghua? Why is she missing? Xiangwen, didn't you play well with Tanghua? Tao Jiejia asked. Xiangwen, we played well, but when everyone fainted, I fainted too. I don't know what happened after that. Xiangwen's expression was ugly. She could tell that this wasn't a joke. Something really happened. Everyone in their class, except for Tanghua, appeared on an unfamiliar island. They didn't have time or communication tools. They couldn't even contact the outside world. Bai Tian suggested, why don't we look for her? She might be nearby. We don't know what's going on now. It's dangerous to be alone. We don't know if there are any wild beasts on this island. Bai Tian looked at Wei Yan and Tao Jiejia, feeling regretful. If she had objected to this from the start and stopped them from playing games, this might not have happened. Let's look around then. Du Li's words were more authoritative. Following his words, the students formed groups of 2 or 3 and began to search the surroundings. Tanghua did not intend to show up now, so she went into hiding. These people didn't really want to look for her, so they weren't very careful. Naturally, they didn't find where she was hiding. Mu Xiaoning also walked around casually. He didn't look for anyone at all. After all, according to his plan, Tanghua was on the cruise ship at this time. Perhaps he had already woken up. She might panic when she realized that all her classmates were gone, but he had left a lot of food on the cruise ship. There was even a refrigerator on the cruise ship. It could last them for a few years, let alone a month. After a short period of panic, she would definitely calm down. After all, she was such a smart person. Perhaps a month on the island would be very long and boring, but it was better than staying on this island that was about to be stained with blood. He hoped that in the future, her life would be bright, and she would realize all her dreams and live happily. Chapter 53-66. I didn't find her. I didn't find her here either. Could something have happened to her? We don't have any communication tools. We can't keep looking like this. We've looked everywhere we can find. There's nothing we can do if there's no one. Why don't we go somewhere else to take a look? Du Li took this suggestion and gathered everyone. Although he was still a little unsettled and panicked, he looked calm on the surface. He looked much calmer than the others. He was also a little annoyed. If he had known that such an accident would happen, he wouldn't have led this game. This place was so far away from the mainland and they didn't have any communication tools. If the people outside couldn't find them, it would really be over. Du Li had never really been to this island. He had contacted someone to help him set up the island. He even asked the other party to take a picture for him. How would he know that this island was the one he had chosen in the beginning? Of course, this place had already been cleaned up by Mu Xiaoning's people. It had completely changed. Even if he had been here before, he might not remember. There's a road here that leads into the forest. There might be people here. Wei Yan walked in front. Let's go over and take a look. Maybe we can find something. Tanghua was in the corner, watching everyone walk towards the forest. After a while, they all disappeared into the forest. Then, she followed them. With the help of the system, she could temporarily block the surveillance cameras at the place she passed by. She wasn't afraid that Mu Xiaoning would suddenly see her. About 10 minutes later, the dilapidated and desolate town appeared in front of everyone. In terms of architectural style, the houses in the town were very beautiful. However, when no one lived in such houses and it was empty, it looked a little eerie and scary. The students standing outside the town weren't the only ones who were afraid. Even the male students couldn't resist the feeling of emptiness, let alone the female students. In terms of architectural style, these buildings should be in the style of the Republic of China. From the damage on the outside, I can tell that no one has lived here for a long time. The water in the river has dried up. However, there's one thing that's good. At least there's a place to shelter from the wind and rain. Wei Yan said, no matter what, let's go in and take a look first. Now that there was only one road, everyone could only walk in and take a look. Mu Xiaoning had spent a lot of money to build this place. Ever since he was reborn, he had been preparing for this day. Of course, he would ask people to do this seriously. He had drawn the map of the town himself. In order to make the town more realistic, he had the patience to wait until today. To be honest, it was a bit of a waste for them to return to the small town that they had spent so many years building. However, it was worth it to be able to see their terrified faces before they died. After spending 3 hours, everyone had walked around the town. Although the outside was a little shabby and there was a lot of dust inside, with a little cleaning, it was still habitable. There's no way to get in touch with the outside world for now. Let's stay here for now. This town was built in the style of the Republic of China, but from the traces of life, there should have been people living here decades ago. Some things should still be in use. The water in the streams and ponds have all dried up, so we can only get seawater to use a large amount of water. Dooley said, fortunately, there's still a well that hasn't dried up yet. If you want to drink, you can drink from there. Another piece of good news is that a student said that he still has a lighter on him. Like to wear fast, supporting female lead, calm down, please collect, wear fast, supporting female lead, calm down, fight bar updates the fastest. Chapter 53-67. Hearing that there was a lighter, the students in the class let out a sigh of relief. As long as there was a fire, their survival would not be so difficult. However, they still hoped that the people outside would discover them as soon as possible. They did not want to stay in this godforsaken place for even a day. There are many rooms here. Whether you choose to live in groups or alone depends on the person. However, I suggest that 2 or 3 people stay in a room, Dooley said. As for food, they could only go out to pick wild vegetables and fruits. Hopefully, they would be lucky. They were not hungry for the time being, so they went to choose their rooms. Some chose to stay in groups of 2 or 3, while others chose to stay alone. Of course, Mu Xiaoning chose a single room. The location he chose was naturally very convenient for him to do things when the time came. The students all knew that he did not fit in, so they had no intention of staying with him. Besides, it was not convenient to stay with Mu Xiaoning. They still wanted to discuss some things. If Mu Xiaoning heard them, it would not be good. There were still students who did not believe that an accident had happened. They wanted to find an opportunity to ask Dooley and Chen Kangol in private if the plan had changed and they had to participate in this game personally. However, after finding an opportunity to ask, they realized that this was really an accident and not a change of plan. This student's heart turned cold. Many people regretted it. If they had known that something like this would happen, they would not have come to join in the fun. Now, they could not see Tang Gua and Mu Xiaoning's reaction. Instead, they had been tormented. After working for half a day, the room was barely habitable. After not eating for so long, everyone was hungry. They began to look for wild vegetables and fruits to eat. Of course, it was difficult to swallow. This meal made even more people regret participating in this boring game. Mu Xiaoning sat in the corner, still wearing the black hat. Seeing everyone's faces scrunched up and their regretful expressions, the corners of his lips curled up. Were these people regretting it? Unfortunately, they only regretted it because they had suffered so much for themselves. If it were not for his design, they would only be spectators, watching him and Tang Gua as monkeys. At that time, they would not regret it at all. Sleeping in a dirty house and eating wild vegetables and fruits was only the beginning. It was also the smallest difficulty they encountered. Fictional chewed on a sour fruit as if he was tasting the most delicious food in the world. They had been tired for a day. Why not let them rest for a day and he would start tomorrow night? There weren't many students like him who cared about their classmates' emotions. The first day passed peacefully. Because there were people living in the town, when the students woke up in the morning, they all felt that the place had become magnificent. They weren't in such a hurry for the time being. After all, they wouldn't be exposed to the wind and sun, and they wouldn't be hungry either. It seemed pretty good to have a different experience. Many students organized themselves and decided to explore. They wanted to take a closer look at what was left behind in this small town. This was Fictional's main purpose in building this small town. If he could pique everyone's curiosity, it would be easier for him to make his move. Fictional's first target was Xiangwen. At this moment, Xiangwen was exploring with another girl and had already arrived at the town stage. In the past, I've only seen such a stage on TV. I didn't expect to see it with my own eyes one day. Xiangwen, who was standing at the gate, said to the girl beside her, "Let's go in and take a look. Maybe we can find something fun." Xiangwen said this because this morning, when she was putting on her shoes, she picked up a silver dollar on the ground. If he took it out, it should be worth some money. There must be a dressing table inside the stage. Maybe he could pick up some other good stuff, which would be priceless. Chapter 53-68. After Xiangwen and the girl walked into the stage, they were instantly attracted by the display inside and the vicissitudes of time. However, they didn't know that the door behind them had already quietly closed. Xiangwen had her own thoughts. She said to the girl, "This place is so big. I'll take a look over there first. When we're going out, let's call each other." The girl agreed. She was interested in the layout of the stage and planned to take a look. The stage was made of wooden flooring. Some parts had collapsed. Afraid of danger, she didn't dare to step on them and just looked around at the edge. Fictional had spent a lot of money and effort to build this town. For this, he had even read a lot of information. There were even some things that looked old. He had gotten people to search all over the country for them. He felt that he hadn't been prepared enough the last time. Although everyone else had died except for Bai Tian, it was only 3 days in 3 days. However, it was resolved within 3 days. The students probably didn't get to enjoy the fear and excitement that came with it. This time, he already had previous experience and could do it more meticulously. He wanted to use half a month or a month to make full use of all the props here so that the students could have an unforgettable experience before they died. Fictional's target this time was Xiangwen. He had his eyes on her since the beginning. He ignored the female student who was watching the stage outside and walked in from another direction. Xiangwen checked the dressing room. She was very interested when she saw the dusty dressing table. There were some things on it that she couldn't see clearly. She didn't expect to find these things on her first trip to the town. She could guarantee that these things could definitely be sold for some money. Moreover, the gold and silver jewelry in the stage weren't considered cultural relics that couldn't be sold. It would be best if she could find some gold and silver jewelry. It would be easier to sell them. However, she didn't know that Fictional was already hiding in a corner of the room. He stood there quietly and watched her excitedly pick up the things on the dressing table to wipe the dust. He had set up some attractive things in every part of the town. However, these good things were accompanied by danger. When the people inside touched the danger, they would be doomed. They would be like fish on a chopping board, at his mercy. At that moment, Mu Xiaoning had changed his clothes, put on a wig and a mask. He looked like a person who had just stepped off the stage. When Xiangwen reached out to take a pearl, she heard a series of noises. Before she could react, she was suddenly surrounded by the various mechanisms on the dressing table. Her hands and ankles were immobilized. She subconsciously wanted to scream, but her mouth was stuffed with a piece of cloth. She couldn't turn around yet because she felt something sharp and cold pressing against her throat. Coincidentally, there was a very clear mirror on the dressing table. Through the mirror, she saw that she was standing with difficulty and saw what was pressed against her neck. It was a knife protruding from the dressing table. Right now, she was standing on tiptoe and was fixed in place. As long as she didn't stand on tiptoe, she wouldn't have the strength to support herself. Then, the sharp dagger would stab into her neck. However, her hands were fixed in place and her mouth was covered. Her eyes widened as she stared at the reflection in the mirror. Chapter 53-69. Yes, she had already seen the overdressed Mu Xiaoning. Tears rolled down from the corners of her eyes as she begged Mu Xiaoning pitifully. She kept shaking her head, as if saying that she didn't do it on purpose. She didn't want these things anymore and wouldn't touch them again. She hoped that Mu Xiaoning would forgive her. Xiangwen was really afraid. She suspected that the figure in the mirror was the soul of the owner of this dressing table. She had only appeared because she had touched the other party's things. Mu Xiaoning ignored Xiangwen's pleas for help. Instead, he brewed tea. His movements were smooth as flowing water, causing Xiangwen to become more and more terrified. Her heartbeat was like the sound of flowing water, beating extremely quickly. She struggled desperately, shook her head, and begged. Mu Xiaoning was indifferent. He actually didn't like to use sharp weapons to stab these people's bodies, nor did he want to be splashed with dirty blood. Therefore, he had set up such a trap. He had only taken advantage of Xiangwen's desire to take advantage of her and threw a silver dollar into her room. That thing was indeed a real one. It was his grandfather's collection. In the end, she really came. He had already planned it beforehand. This time, he wouldn't do it himself if he could. He would quietly watch from the side as these people couldn't hold on and died. He would watch as they fell from fear into despair. Mu Xiaoning had already brewed the tea and was drinking it. Xiangwen cried and let out a frightened whimper. Especially when she felt the sharp knife sinking into her throat a little, her tears couldn't stop flowing. Mu Xiaoning took a sip of tea and planned to open his mouth and sing. He knew this because his grandfather liked these things when he was very young and would lead him to sing. Many years ago, his grandfather had brought his entire family to seek refuge. It was only in his father's generation that he found a chance to return. His grandfather's greatest regret was that he had never been able to return to his hometown. When Xiangwen heard the ethereal voice, she was so frightened that she trembled. She even couldn't help but pee. Her face turned pale from fright. She stared at the person in the mirror who kept jumping around. Especially when the other party's casual gaze landed on her, it made her scalp turn cold. She understood that this ghost wanted to watch her die. She regretted it too much. Why did she have to be greedy? If she hadn't been greedy, she definitely wouldn't have waited for death here. Tangua hid in the dark and watched Mu Xiaoning slowly torment Xiangwen. She had no intention of going out for the time being. She could tell that Mu Xiaoning wanted to see Xiangwen unable to hold on and stab the sharp knife into her neck. This person was quite playful. Xiangwen was so scared by him that she peed her pants. The room had been closed, so the girl outside couldn't come in. Besides, the girl had been attracted by the architectural style outside and couldn't remember Xiangwen for a while. Even if he remembered her, she would probably leave on her own if no one answered his call. After an unknown period of time, Moose shouting had already stopped. Out of nowhere he produced a book, one of those old-fashioned brochures, and began to read it with great interest. However, when the system scanned it, it saw that it was a phone screen. There was even a picture of Tangua on the screen. "Host, he must be missing you." The system secretly said, "This guy is actually looking at you and smiling. He's even touching your face. This isn't just liking you, it's gradually turning into infatuation. I wonder if he regrets making such a plan now and giving up the chance to be with you." Chapter 5370. 2 hours passed unknowingly. Xiangwen, who was tiptoeing, gradually couldn't hold on any longer. Her tears, sweat, and urine on the ground mixed together, leaving a terrible smell in the room. She had never been in such a sorry state since she was young. However, the only thing on her mind now was how to survive. She was afraid, too afraid. As long as she lost her balance, she would be pierced by the sharp knife against her neck. She could already feel that her neck was about to be cut. She secretly looked at Moose shouting, who had been reading in the mirror, and started crying again, hoping that he would pay attention to her. She really knew that she was wrong. Afraid? Hearing Moose shouting finally speak, Xiangwen wanted to nod, but she remembered the knife against her neck. She didn't dare and could only whimper in response. "It's good that you're afraid. This is what happens to greedy traders." Xiangwen wanted to say something to defend herself, but unfortunately, her mouth was stuffed and she didn't have the chance to say anything. She thought that Moose shouting had been harmed by someone before. She took the other party's things and reminded this ghost of his former enemy, so he hated her so much. She really wanted to explain that she was just a passerby and not that greedy trader. However, she didn't know that Moose shouting was talking about her betrayal of Tangua. In Moose shouting's opinion, Xiangwen was a greedy traitor when she led and persuaded Tangua to attend the class reunion. Actually, he didn't start with Xiangwen last time. As for the water, he had already forgotten. At that time, he only confirmed the people who came and then got rid of them one by one. Actually, he really hated it. If he touched their bright red but smelly blood and got it all over his body, even the sea might despise him. Moose shouting laughed out loud. His voice was terrifying. Hearing this, Xiangwen trembled and fainted from fright. Xiangwen, who had fainted, could no longer support her toes. Her neck couldn't help but press against the sharp knife. Moose shouting didn't even raise his head. He merely glanced at her before lowering his head to read the book in his hand. In fact, he was looking at his phone. On the screen, it was still Tangua's photo. The corners of his mouth curled up and his eyes were slightly closed. It was as if he had completed something that gave him a sense of accomplishment. However, the next moment, he felt that something was wrong in the room. He quickly opened his eyes and saw Tangua standing beside Xiangwen. The sharp knife did not pierce Xiangwen's neck. She was saved by Tangua. However, her face was pale. She was probably traumatized. Moose shouting and Tangua's eyes met. He almost lost control of his expression. Why was she here? Didn't he tell Blackie to dock the cruise ship at another cruise ship? Just when he was a little flustered, he suddenly remembered that he was wearing a mask. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. While Tangua wasn't paying attention, Moose shouting turned around and ran away. He flipped over the window seat and took his phone with him. However, the book that was used as a cover was left on the table. Tangua had no intention of chasing after him. She removed the knife that was pressed against Xiangwen's neck, but she had no intention of removing the mechanism. After all, she didn't know what was going on with the mechanism. It was better to let others think of a way. Seeing that Xiang Wen was still unconscious, she quickly went over and put the book that Mu Xiaoning had left behind into the system space. This person is not clean. What if someone finds out? This book and this tea set have his fingerprints on them. He didn't even know that he was wearing gloves. System, ah. Chapter 5371. After dealing with the scene, Tang Guo went to call for help. On the other hand, Mu Xiaoning had already returned to his secret room. He quickly changed his clothes and returned to the room that everyone knew about. If not for the fact that he was afraid of counting the people, he really wanted to go to the surveillance room to see how Tang Guo had gotten in. Could it be that old He had broken his promise and did not follow his instructions? Or did something go wrong somewhere else? No matter what, he would not let this group of people off. Since things had already started, there was no turning back. It was impossible for him to watch them continue to live carefreely. Hell was more suitable for these children who liked to play in the human world and treated themselves as gods. Tang Guo ran out first. She wanted to call the girl outside, but the girl had already gone to another pavilion. She could only go somewhere else to look for her. After a while, she found Bai Tian. When Bai Tian saw Tang Guo, she was very surprised. Tang Guo, are you all right? Tang Guo saw Bai Tian heave a sigh of relief and replied, I'm fine. When I woke up, I was on the beach and didn't see you guys. Later, I passed through a forest and found this place. Then, I heard a strange sound and went to the stage. In the end, I found Xiang Wen. Something happened to Xiang Wen. Hearing that something happened to Xiang Wen, Bai Tian forgot to think about where Tang Guo had gone and quickly asked what had happened. In a few words, Tang Guo told him about how she saw Xiang Wen being tied up by the mechanism and how she almost died. Bai Tian said, then let's hurry over and take a look. Call some people over. That mechanism is very difficult to deal with, Tang Guo suggested. Bai Tian nodded. Yes, yes. Call a few male students over. But they're not in their rooms now. They went to play around. We won't be able to find them for a while. We can only try shouting, but some places here are very soundproof. They might not be able to hear us. Fortunately, there were students nearby who rushed over when they heard Bai Tian's voice. Knowing that something had happened to Xiang Wen, they quickly followed to check on the situation. When they walked into the room, they couldn't help but frown. The mixture of sweat and urine was really too smelly. Two of the students couldn't help but vomit. They really couldn't stand the smell and hurriedly rushed out. When they saw Xiang Wen's sorry state, everyone present was in disbelief. They found some water and splashed it on Xiang Wen to wake her up. Xiang Wen woke up slowly and shouted, I don't want to die. I was wrong. I shouldn't have taken your things. I won't take it. I really won't take it. Seeing Xiang Wen on the verge of breaking down, the few of them tried to comfort her, but they found that it was useless. They could only wait for her to cry. After a while, Xiang Wen realized that she had been saved and started crying again. After that, a few male students helped to dismantle the mechanism. The mechanism was made of solid wood and there were no screws. It was connected by tenon and was very sturdy. If they couldn't find the key points, they really didn't know how to dismantle the mechanism. Of course, Tang Guo knew this, but she didn't intend to say anything. In everyone's eyes, she probably wouldn't. At this time, everyone was busy with the mechanism and temporarily forgot to ask why Tang Guo suddenly appeared. Of course, they did not think that this matter was caused by Tang Guo. She was so poor, how could she have such ability? Most people wouldn't be able to make such a simple dressing table with a mechanism. I can't get it off. If you have a knife, it will be much easier. You can cut it with a knife. Why don't we go out and look for a knife? Chapter 53-72. Everyone agreed with this suggestion. Just as everyone was about to leave, Xiangwen hurriedly stopped them. Don't leave me alone. I'm scared. She instinctively looked at Tanghua, but she did not turn back. Instead, she said, then let's leave 2 classmates here to watch. The rest of you, hurry up and find a knife. If you can't find one, then a sharp stone will do. Hearing that Tanghua was busy with her matter, Xiangwen wanted to ask her to stay and accompany her, but she swallowed her words. The 2 classmates who stayed behind could not stay in the room. Let's go outside and open the window. We can see you. Xiangwen could hear the disdain in their words, but she did not dare to say anything for the time being. She was really afraid that these people would leave her alone and that Ghost would appear again to take her life. Thinking of the previous scene, she trembled all over. Only then did she remember her embarrassment. Her classmates only knew that she was so scared that she peed, but they did not know that she even pooped. It was winter, and she did not have any clothes to change into. Her crotch was very uncomfortable, and this made her break down. This time, she was practically dying. She swore that she would not touch anything in the future. Everyone knew about Xiangwen's experience. Even Mu Xiaoning came over with the others to take a look. Seeing Xiangwen break down, he suddenly felt that it was not a bad thing that she was not dead. There were some accidents this time, but it did not dispel his thoughts. What surprised him was that the tea set and the book he had left behind were gone. He did not have time to return to the surveillance room for the time being. He did not know what was going on, but when he found that no one noticed that something was wrong with him, he quietly walked out of the room. He had originally planned to create an accident of his own death if someone suspected him midway. Then, he would never show his face in front of others again so that he could take action better. Of course, it was more convenient to adjust the plan with them since it had not reached that stage. He was not interested in Xiangwen for the time being. Who was the next one? The sky was almost dark. Someone finally found a knife. It was very blunt, but it was better than nothing. After spending a few more hours, they finally managed to rescue the exhausted Xiangwen from the trap. Xiangwen leaned on the dressing table weakly and almost fell. She did not care about arguing. No one came to help her. She just wanted to leave the room immediately. At this moment, the others turned to look at Tanghua and asked her what was going on. Tanghua gave the speech she had prepared beforehand. At this time, Wei Yan questioned, then why did you go directly to that room? Wei Yan still felt that something was wrong. In fact, she didn't think that this matter had anything to do with Tanghua. She just felt that there were some suspicious points. There's a path behind the stage that leads to the forest. I was there at the time and heard some movement here. It seemed like someone was singing. Wei Yan couldn't tell that Tanghua was lying, so she just nodded. Bai Tian tugged at her. Are you suspecting Tanghua? That's impossible. How many people know how to use that mechanism? I didn't suspect her. I just wanted to know where she came from. Wei Yan replied. Xiangwen had already cleaned herself up. Fortunately, there was some cloth in the room. Although there was a smell, it could still be used. After she was done, she told her classmates about her experience. When they heard that this place was haunted, everyone was in disbelief. How was that possible? It's true. The dressing table should be that ghost's. I suspect that I messed with the things on it and attracted the ghost out. Xiangwen then added, I think it's better not to touch the things here. Otherwise, you'll be stained by something unclean. Class rep, when can we get out? Xiangwen looked at Dooley and asked expectantly. Dooley was silent. We don't have any communication devices outside. We can only wait for them to discover that we're missing. Disappointment flashed in Xiang Wen's eyes. She couldn't help but hug her arms. She looked at Tangua's position and nudged Tangua, but she found that Tangua's expression was very cold. She felt guilty. Thinking of the greedy traitor that the ghost said, she suddenly realized that she fit the description very well. She widened her eyes and then looked at Tangua again. However, she found that Tangua's figure was much smaller than the ghost's. She quickly shook her head. Tangua, how did you fall into another place alone? Xiang Wen asked in a low voice. Tangua looked back at her and said, everyone doesn't know what's going on. How would I know? Tangua, did I offend you? I feel that you're not treating me right. Xiang Wen asked tentatively. Digression. Chapter 53-73. Tangua didn't answer Xiang Wen's question immediately. She just gave her a deep look. Xiang Wen felt very guilty. She regretted asking this question. She pulled her clothes and thought of the current situation. It was better not to have a conflict with Tangua. She didn't want to continue the topic. Forget it. You're probably tired. By the way, do you have a cell phone with you? I don't know what kind of place this is. When will the people outside know that we're missing? I really want to go out. If I had known, I wouldn't have come to the party. No matter how good the cruise is, it can't compare to freedom. It's so hard to live without a cell phone. If the people outside don't find us, it will be very difficult for us to survive here. Thinking of the strangeness of this place and the fact that they could only eat some wild vegetables every day, Xiang Wen became more and more afraid. In particular, there were unclean things here. If they met again, would they be so lucky to be alive? The more she thought about it, the more her eyes turned red. Tears began to fall from her eyes. She thought that Tangua would comfort her. According to their previous relationship, when she was sad, Tangua would always find a way to make her happy. Even if she didn't buy small gifts, she would say some comforting words. However, Tangua just sat next to the fire and stared at it without saying a word, which made her very uncomfortable. They had only been separated for a day or two. Why did Tangua suddenly become so strange? She thought about it carefully. She didn't do anything to offend her, so she was really confused. Do you also feel uncomfortable being left here? At this time, Tangua spoke. I almost didn't want to come at first. Why did you persuade me to come? If this accident didn't happen, I would be the one who stayed on the deserted island and mistakenly thought that I had transmigrated. Xiang Wen's eyes widened and her face instantly turned pale. She wanted to ask Tangua why she knew this, but she couldn't make a sound. Xiang Wen wanted to say no, but when she saw Tangua's penetrating eyes, she closed her mouth tightly. I overheard it by accident. Xiang Wen didn't doubt Tangua's simple explanation. She thought that since so many students in the class knew about this matter, it was inevitable that they would talk about it in some corner where Tangua was not around. It was not strange that Tangua happened to hear it. Xiang Wen pulled down the scarf around her neck and covered half of her face. She didn't know what to say now. Because Tangua's appearance looked cold and unapproachable. She originally wanted to say that she was going to be with Tangua, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. I've heard that you've been bribed by Dooley, Tangua said again. I used to think that you weren't that kind of person. I didn't ask you about it because I thought that we were good friends and shouldn't be suspected by others. You've disappointed me. For some reason, Xiang Wen was very flustered. She wanted to explain, but Tangua had already stood up and walked away from the bonfire in the yard. She walked into a room that happened to be adjacent to Mu Xiaoning's room. Xiangwen sat on the spot and could only watch Tanggua's back as she disappeared into the corridor. She didn't know who had discussed this matter and let Tanggua know. Taking advantage of the fact that Dooley was not asleep, Xiangwen moved to his side and told him about it. Dooley didn't have much of a reaction. Now that everyone was in a difficult situation, what happened before was just a small problem. Even if Tanggua wasn't satisfied with them, she wouldn't do anything. The most important thing now is to wait for the outside world to find us. Don't think too much about anything else. Transmigration, female supporting lead, calm down, will continue to be updated in the new bookstore. There are no advertisements on the website. Please bookmark and recommend the new bookstore. Like Transmigration, female supporting lead, calm down. Please bookmark, Transmigration, female supporting lead, calm down. New bookstore updates the fastest. Chapter 53-74. But she knows the truth and ignores me now. Xiangwen said in annoyance, actually, nothing happened. She made it seem like she wanted to cut ties with me. She has such a weird temper. We were just playing a small game and didn't really want to do anything to her. She would still go out when the time came. Now that the game hasn't been completed and everyone is in trouble, she wants to cut ties with me. Dooley wasn't interested in the friendship between Xiangwen and Tanggua. He was still annoyed. He didn't know when the people outside would find out that they were in trouble. Even if they knew that they were missing, they might not be able to find them in time. They could only rely on the weeds here. It was okay for 10 days to half a month, but who knew what would happen if they stayed here for a long time. Xiangwen, go back and rest first. Xiangwen felt that Dooley was a little angry and didn't dare to say more. She hurried back to her room. Jia and I went to the beach to observe during the day and didn't find any traces of a ship. We also checked the beach and couldn't find any traces of human life. Maybe something happened to this town a few decades ago, and everyone here has either left or died. Chen Kangol rubbed his forehead. Dooley, this is very troublesome. I plan to carve a distress signal on the branches starting tomorrow and see if the branches will float out and let the people outside find us. Dooley, that's the only way now. If I had known, I wouldn't have played this game, Tao Jijia said. She was actually very scared. Dooley and Chen Kangol could only wait, which meant that there was really no other way out. She had waited at the beach for a whole day, but no ship passed by. The more she waited, the more desperate she felt. If the people outside couldn't find them, then she would have to survive here and live a savage life. What was the point of living like this even if Chen Kangol was a rich second-generation heir? Dooley was actually a little annoyed. Yes, if he had known, he wouldn't have played this game. Who knew that something like this would happen? Kangol, what do you think is going on? Why did we suddenly appear on the island? Where did the cruise ship go? Is this man-made or something else? Chen Kangol frowned. If it's man-made, why would the other party do this? Like us, want to play a game. Tao Jijia immediately said. Chen Kangol and Dooley looked at each other. It was indeed possible, but who would play such a boring game? As for this small town, it was obvious that no one had lived in it for decades. They were all knowledgeable people. The iconic things inside were really from that era. What if it's not man-made? Dooley asked again, is there really such a strange thing in this world? The answer, of course, was that he did not know. Their conversation was completely overheard by Tanggua. It was obvious that Mu Xiaoning wasn't trying to transmigrate. He just wanted to bring them to an uninhabited island and create an opportunity to kill them. Mu Xiaoning even pretended to be a ghost once, most likely to use this kind of supernatural event to scare them and make them die in fear. Of course, this group of people were not fools. Now that she was here, she would definitely not let this group of people die. In that case, Mu Xiaoning's plan would basically be foiled, and it would be much more difficult for him to carry out his plan. She was not here to add to the trouble. She had to think of a way to make Mu Xiaoning feel more relaxed. It seemed like he had to release some paper puppets to play with. Chapter 5375. Not only did she have to release the paper puppets to play with, but she also had to set up some small arrays. With so many people around, it would be better to play slowly. Tanguo took out a handful of paper puppets from the system space. There were dozens of paper human puppets in the room. This time, the paper man puppet did not take on the appearance of a human. She dripped a drop of blood onto the paper puppets, then silently recited the incantation to make them change into the form she had arranged. Some of them turned into clothes, some turned into snakes, insects, rats, and ants, some turned into larger paper dolls, and some turned into cloth dolls. Just these things alone were enough to make her classmates piss their pants in fear. After the arrangements were made, she let the paper puppets hide in a corner for the time being. Since no one was rummaging through the house, they would naturally go out to play when they were needed. After you're done, you can change your appearance to live in this world as long as you don't do evil. As soon as Tanguo said this, the paper puppets all cheered. Then she gave them some pills. When the time comes, don't kill anyone. When you see that they can't take it anymore, give them a pill before continuing to play. The paper puppets rolled up and hid the pills Tanguo gave them. Tanguo looked at the clothes hanging in the corner. You'll be called Xiao Yi. Every night is your time to play. You can play however you want. You can go to their room or float outside. Before many people notice you, just quickly slip away. You can do it, but don't kill anyone. The clothes swayed happily from side to side. After receiving Tanguo's order, it floated out of the window. After a while, the system reported to Tanguo. Dear host, your Xiao Yi scared a guy who was peeing outside so much that he didn't even pull up his pants. He shouted and ran to a place with people. Tanguo had already laid down and was preparing to sleep. It was time to sleep, otherwise she would have dark circles tomorrow. Before going to sleep, she asked, "What's Mu Xiaoning doing?" He went back to his secret room. Most likely, he's planning how to play tomorrow. Just now, he confirmed that tomorrow's targets are Tao Jejia and Qin Kangol. These two people will go to the beach tomorrow to look for tree branches to carve words. Mu Xiaoning looked at the surveillance footage and decided to choose them. The system had processed the surveillance footage of Tanguo's existence, so Mu Xiaoning could only see that Tanguo had entered from behind the stage and nothing else. This time, Tanguo really fell asleep. Before dawn, she took something to eat in the system space. After eating, she went out to look for wild vegetables with the others. Her performance was ordinary, so no one paid much attention to her. Now, not many people would look at her. Everyone was thinking about when they would be able to leave. After eating wild vegetables for 2 days in a row, they couldn't bear it any longer. Knowing that Qin Kangol was going to the beach, someone suggested that they go to the beach to see if they could pick up crabs, fish, and prawns to improve their meals. As a result, Qin Kangol's group had 3 more male classmates. But when they walked into the forest, Qin Kangol said, "You guys go ahead first. Jia Jia and I will find some branches to carve some words on. When the time comes, we'll put all these branches into the sea. Hopefully, they will float outside. Okay. Be careful. Last night, I heard that there were clothes floating around. This place is really not clean. The only person who saw Xiao Yi was the student who was peeing outside. Many people were skeptical about this matter. Chen Kangol didn't believe in supernatural powers. He still felt that someone had arranged this, so he didn't listen. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.